being a part of our program is part of his therapy, really. I talked to his wife recently, Melissa, and she said, Hollis, it's been so hard to really understand why this happened to Taylor. And it wasn't until he really started volunteering and being a part of this program that we realized, okay, this is why. He's serving a purpose, and he's educating young children about empathy and compassion, and it's really given him a sense of purpose.
Hello, and welcome to More Than Sunday, a weekly podcast where we take a deeper dive into the stories, themes, and questions of our faith. My name is Eric Chakowski. I'm one of the worship directors here at First United Methodist Church, Richardson. And with me every week is one of our associate pastors, Josh Fitzpatrick.
Hey, Eric. It's good to be back in the studio.
Good to have you.
So, this is kind of random, but we're going golfing tomorrow.
It's supposed to be a beautiful day, 66 and sunny.
We're pre-recording this, obviously, before we launch this episode. So by the time you, as our listener, are listening to it, this round of golf will have already taken place. But Eric and I have never played golf. And
together.
Yeah, sorry. I should clarify. Yeah, well, I mean, some people might see us play golf and wonder if we've actually ever played before.
It's a fair statement.
So I made sure to ask Eric if he was any good, because this is kind of the thing I do. If I'm going to play golf with someone, I want to make sure that they're not amazingly better than me, and I am not good.
Josh and I are both pretty competitive people by nature. And so it's...
Just when it comes to golf?
I still am going to be competitive.
I've kind of just given up.
Trying to be competitive, but the reality is we're both trying to gauge, how the day is going to go, and we'll have to report back next week.
Yeah, you promise you're not good.
Listen, triple digits, man.
Triple digits?
I'm almost ashamed to admit that, but...
All right. Well,
if I can shoot doubles, it'll be a good day.
No. You're in good company. This should be fun. Well, hey, look, it is episode 2 of season 4, and we are really looking forward to the conversation we're going to have today. It has nothing to do with golf, but it is even more exciting than our golf game is. So as you know, our goal for season 4 is to highlight a variety of nonprofit organizations and ways that people in our church and in our community can get plugged into service. And so we're looking forward today to a conversation with a rather new organization called To Be Like Me that was founded relatively recently. And so we've got 2 guests on the episode today. One of them is the founder of the organization, Hollis Owens, and the second guest today is a church member here and one of the facilitators of the To Be Like Me programs, TJ Smelko. Today we are excited to welcome to the More Than Sunday podcast somebody who is local here to Richardson and has a heart for our community, somebody who has founded a rather new nonprofit here in the area called To Be Like Me. So it's so good to have Hollis Owens, who is the founder and president of the board of To Be Like Me. Welcome to the podcast, Hollis.
Thank you for having me.
So we just want to kick things off by maybe setting some context for our listeners. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your own background and the kind of work that you do on a regular basis?
Sure. So I graduated from Washington and Lee University in Virginia, have my undergrad degree in neuroscience, and then I went on to UT Southwestern Medical Center here in Dallas and received my master's in physical therapy, and that was back in 2000. So I've been a physical therapist for the last 19 years, mainly working in the area of pediatrics. So I've worked in school districts, I've worked in acute care, outpatient, lots of different areas of physical therapy. And so that has really been my foundation to help springboard me into this new role.
So tell us a little bit about this new role and this new nonprofit. So it's called To Be Like Me. You guys have hit the ground running over the last year and a half or so. Tell us a little bit about the organization and how you took it from just being an idea to actually bring it to fruition.
So as a physical therapist, one of the things I love is that you really become part of the family, especially if you work in the area of pediatrics. Because if you're putting together a treatment plan, you need everyone to be on board. You need the whole family to be on board with the treatment plan. So you have to really get to know the family, their daily routines, so that you can incorporate the treatment plan into their daily lives. So it was through really learning about the families and their daily life that I learned that there are a lot of barriers out there. And I knew there were, but when patients and their families come into treatment and they tell you stories about problems in the classroom or going out to eat or taking an airline flight or, anywhere where there might be not only a physical barrier, but a human barrier that exists. And I realized that rather than helping families navigate the problems when they occur, I'd much rather be on the other side of that and help prevent some of those problems. And so I thought, what better way to do that than to really educate the community? So I was involved in a disability awareness program in the school district. I led a program for 4 years. Great program, absolutely fabulous program, and it still exists. Those programs were really led by volunteers in the community. And basically, students would go through different simulations where they would learn about what it is like to be deaf or hard of hearing or have a mobility issue or have difficulty with fine motor or communication or sensory processing. And like I said, all of these were simulations. And what I started noticing is that kids would simulate, let's take, for example, vision impairment. They might put on goggles that simulates hemianopsia or retinal detachment or macular degeneration or total blindness. And they would take off their goggles and say, this must be awful. And I realized that we were really sending the wrong message, because if my friend Blake, who works for Dallas Lighthouse for the Blind, if he were leading that station, he would tell the kids that his world is beautiful or that he actually has had time to adapt to being blind. And these are some of the tools that he uses on a daily basis to where he can work and be the communications director at Dallas Lighthouse. So I realized that really these simulations needed to be led by somebody living with that disability every day.
Oh, wow.
So that's where the idea came from for To Be Like Me.
And so the idea developed while you were in this program. How long has it taken from that idea to actually these steps toward being a established nonprofit?
Took about 1.5 years.
Okay. And that started with you. Did you pull together a team, or how has that developed?
I had a few friends involved in that previous program. And when I told them my idea, they were so excited about getting involved in this kind of next phase, I guess you could say. And so actually one of these individuals was at a Bible study at Highland Park United Methodist, and she heard about a new building that was being built across the street, the Tullison Family Activity Center. And she called me and said, Hollis, you might want to find out what they're doing with that space. And so I called, and my heart leapt out of my chest because the individual I needed to speak to is Vance Gilmore. And he's been a friend of mine for a very long time. He was the director of Camp John Mark for many years, and I worked as a counselor there, and so knew him personally.
How cool is that?
So I reached out to Vance, and he had me come in for a meeting, and I think it was scheduled a week after I initially called him. And so during that week, I told my husband, he's a graphic designer, I told him I needed a logo and I needed a mission statement, and because I wanted to make sure when I got in front of Vance, I had everything ready to go, and I wanted him to know I was serious. And so I went into that meeting. I had a pitch deck for him, and I said, here's my idea, and he listened, and he said, Hollis, we would love to house this program, but you need to be a nonprofit first.
Okay.
And so that's when I took off my medical hat and put on my nonprofit business hat and took classes and learned how to file paperwork. And so we officially received our 501c3 on December 11th, 2018.
So tell us what that mission statement is for To Be Like Me.
To Be Like Me is a disability awareness program that breaks down barriers and fosters compassion.
So I love that in your previous simulations, folks were saying, boy, this must be awful. And from one standpoint, I think that does foster some compassion, but you wanted to take it one step further and really sort of flip the script of the beauty that can be seen in some of these different abilities. And I think that's such an important thing. We've talked on this podcast a lot about the importance of the language that we use and sort of reframing common narratives in society about how things are. And so I love that you guys took that extra step to do that.
And I also love, we should say that Hollis and your family are members of First Methodist Dallas, and you've partnered now with Highland Park United Methodist, and now we're finding ways to hopefully partner with you in creative ways here in Richardson at First Methodist Richardson. I love the Methodist connection. That's why we call it connectionalism, right? Tell us a little bit more about this approach. So you have people with different abilities who are working with your organization. What do their roles look like and their involvement in the programs themselves?
Well, another thing I realized is that in our previous program, students would rotate through different simulations, and each of those simulations was kind of a different impairment. So we had vision, hearing, communication, sensory processing, mobility, fine motor. And, I've worked with patients for 19 years, and really it's hard to put people in boxes like that. Sometimes people with mobility impairments actually may have vision and sensory processing and mobility challenges. And so what we tried to do was, instead of doing separate simulations, we actually put participants through experiences. And within those experiences, we have leaders who have challenges within those experiences. So we have 5 experiences. Those experiences are a classroom environment, we have a restaurant, we have an airplane, we have assistive technology, and then we have a day in the life. So depending on which experience our participants are in, that kind of guides us onto which leaders are leading each of those experiences. So for example, in Flykind Airlines, which is one of our experiences, that experience is led by somebody who has had a traumatic brain injury and someone who works for an organization called NAMI. And that particular leader deals with anxiety, emotional difficulties. And so a lot of times on an airline flight, people who have difficulties with sensory processing have a hard time organizing all of the information coming at them when you're on an airplane. The fan blowing on your face, the dings that come on in an airplane, the flight attendants on the loudspeaker asking you to do this or that, sitting in close proximity to other people. These are all things that are often very difficult for someone who has difficulty processing sensory information around them. So our participants experience what that is like. We actually overstimulate them initially, and then we talk about how it made them feel, maybe some tools that would be helpful if they're in that situation. And then another one of our leaders will talk about how anxiety can come into play, not only on an airplane, but even in a classroom, and tools that we may use to help people who are having those difficulties. We also have a leader in that experience with a mobility impairment, and she talks to the kids about the difficulties she has with even getting into a seat on an airplane. And so, as you can see, we have 3 different leaders in that experience with 3 different type challenges, but we're able to incorporate it into one experience.
And so tell me, who is participating in these programs? Is it a group setting? Do I, as a parent, sign up my kids to attend, or what does that look like?
Right now, our signups are mainly school-age children between 4th grade and 6th grade. That seems to be kind of a perfect age for kids to really hear stories and then be able to understand then how to act with compassion. It's also, that late elementary, middle school time when bullying is at an all-time high, and we want to make sure and capture the kids before they get to that stage.
So 4th to 6th graders, if I was to go to your website and see, do you have experiences listed that someone can register for?
Good question. So we do have a way of collecting your information if you go to our website, and we will reach out to you if you're interested in being a part or being a school that comes to our program. We also have community programs available. We just had one on February 9th. It was a big success. We have another one coming up on April 19th. So if you are interested in attending that one, there is a sign up on our website, tobelikeme.org.
Beautiful. Hollis, do you have a story of a particular participant that you worked with, or maybe one of your facilitators, maybe a story of impact and how this organization has potentially changed the conversation for someone?
This is really where I get emotional, because being a physical therapist for 19 years, many of our leaders are past patients of mine. My friend Brian Spann, he is one of our leaders. He has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. He was my patient at Scottish Rite when he was 5. And 19 years later, he is now 24 years old. And he is really one of the reasons why we got this program going. He has been my cheerleader from the very beginning when I told him about what we were doing. He is an advocate. He really wants to be able to tell kids that he would much rather you just say hello and start a conversation with him instead of possibly just staring or not knowing what to say. It's more important to really just open up dialogue. He just wants to be treated like everyone else. And so he is one of our leaders in our Day in the Life experience. And in that experience, we actually get to see Brian from the time he wakes up in the morning to the time he goes to work in the afternoon.
Okay.
It's difficult to be able to communicate that in words, what that looks like. So the kids actually get to watch a video of him at home, how he gets up, how they use the Hoyer lift to get him up out of bed, the hygiene, brushing his teeth, getting dressed, getting to work, what all of that looks like. And then after the kids watch that video, they ask questions. And it is our hope that when these kids see someone like Brian out and about, they will have already been able to communicate with someone like Brian. And so that barrier will have been broken and they can just open up communication. So Brian has been a longtime friend, and I'm just so proud that he's now a part of To Be Like Me. Another person I really want to talk about is my friend Taylor. He and I went to college together in Virginia, and we ran track together. So we were fellow track mates. And about 5 years ago, he was involved in a car accident where he sustained a traumatic brain injury. And he has been through extensive rehabilitation. He just recently received a prosthetic skull, and he's really come a long way in his rehab. One of the areas he's working on is communication. So he goes to a place called Bind here in Dallas, where they actually do a podcast, and he gets to work on his communication skills.
Oh, wow.
And so he actually works in our Fly Kind airline experience, and he talks to the kids about how, since his brain injury, he has difficulty navigating airports, airplanes, malls, grocery stores. And now that he has his new skull, sometimes it's hard to tell from the outside that he has a disability. So sometimes people get frustrated and a little bit impatient when he takes longer at the register or at a kiosk. So he talks to the kids about, realizing that you really don't know what someone's going through or what their day has been like. So it's always important to be patient and understanding and always be kind, because you never know what someone's going through. And so I love that Taylor and I were friends in college, and now he's, being a part of our program is part of his therapy, really. So I'm just so thankful that he's a part of this. I talked to his wife recently, Melissa, and she said, Hollis, it's been so hard to really understand why this happened to Taylor. And it wasn't until he really started volunteering and being a part of this program that we realized, okay, this is why. He's serving a purpose, and he's educating young children about empathy and compassion, and it's really given him a sense of purpose. So.
I love to hear when you say that it's a part of Taylor's therapy. That reminds us that work like that is not only hopefully transformational for the participants, for the people who are learning, but also for folks facilitating and for people like you who are behind the scenes and doing a lot of work like that. It's just transformational all around.
It is. And then TJ, let's talk about TJ.
Yeah, we
TJ
love
Smelko,
TJ.
yeah, one of our church members here every Sunday morning.
This has been a wonderful and transformational experience for TJ. He actually helped me previously with the disability awareness program in the school district. So he was one that was living with a disability, and he led our deaf and hard of hearing simulation. And when he would speak to the kids about the importance of looking at him when you speak, and the importance of, being patient and understanding when he has difficulty hearing, watching the kids respond to him was another reminder that, okay, the kids are actually listening and responding to TJ when he tells them what he needs from them. And TJ has gained new friendships. He has gained confidence, and, this provides a platform for advocacy for him, which he needs. And I've just loved to see that transformation in him.
I know for us, watching his continual development, he just has such a sense of pride about to be like me. You can see in all his social media posts, and you ask him about it. And so we're excited to be able to chat with him and interview him on this episode in just a couple of minutes. But you can see the impact that it's making on his life. And so it's incredible to see. Now, I listened to your stories, and I'm inspired. And I can imagine that others who are listening are likewise inspired. Are there things that people can do to help contribute to your work? I don't know if there's volunteer opportunities, but are there ways that church members here at First Methodist Richardson or whoever's listening might be able to support your organization?
Absolutely. There are volunteer opportunities available. We are able to work with 80 kids at a time when they come through our program.
Okay.
That's a lot of kids. Now, when they rotate through the different experiences, they are broken up into 5 groups, and each of those groups has about 15 kids. So there won't be more than 15 kids in each experience at a time, because after 20 minutes, they rotate.
Okay.
It's a 2-hour program. So as you can imagine, when you are leading 80 kids through a program, we need shepherds to help shepherd these kids through each of these experiences. We also have facilitators within each experience, and they help guide some of the questioning for our leaders and make sure that, all of the technical parts of each experience are running smoothly. And so we need volunteers, not only as guides, but also as facilitators. And on our website, if you go to contact us, you can put in your information, and we will definitely reach out to you and let you know how you can become a volunteer.
Okay, great. And I would imagine also just funding to help run these programs as well?
Absolutely. All of our leaders have the option of getting paid or as serving as volunteers to lead our program. I would say about half of our leaders have decided they would like to get a paycheck. And we love that. We love that we're allowing these leaders to, have the opportunity to get paid. And I'll never forget seeing TJ's face when he saw his first pay come through. He was looking at his phone, and he got this big smile on his face.
That's awesome.
And I said, "What are you looking at?" And he said, "I just got paid, and I'm so excited." And that, to me, is just priceless. So,
Well, Hollis, hearing about the work that To Be Like Me is doing has been so great for us this morning, and we are just inspired by you and by you following your conviction to do this. We have one more question that we ask every guest that comes on the podcast, and that question is this. At this point in your life, what is one thing that you wish someone would have told you?
I think what I have learned, I think my biggest lesson with this program is that I have been led through every step of the process. I have not been anxious. I have not been worried. I have never said no to a meeting because I know that each meeting gives me a little something to then take me to the next person. And I have literally just followed my heart and listened and have really known from the beginning that I truly am being led through this whole process. And to me, that is just something that I think with my previous self, someone could have told me that and I would have said, yeah, I listen, I try to follow my heart. But truly listening and truly letting go of any expectations or any, oh, I've got to succeed, I've got to do well, I've got to make this right. And, I don't think we would be where we are right now if I just hadn't let go and let it happen.
It's a great lesson for all of us in just sort of surrendering ourselves to conviction and to discerning sort of a process for where we need to go next. And that's a really difficult thing for all of us to do. So thank you for that. Hollis, it's been a joy again to have you on the podcast. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and thanks for sharing some time with us today.
Thank you.
I am always so inspired by people who have an idea, feel a conviction on their heart, but actually go through the steps and the hard work to establish something like To Be Like Me, who go further than just dreaming about something, but really go through the steps of finding the mission and the heart behind what they do, putting pen to paper, establishing a 501c3. I mean, all these steps that Hollis has gone through to reach people with different abilities, to do this incredible work with this community of people is so inspiring to me, and I hope to you as well.
We're really looking forward to the second half of today's episode as we have an opportunity to interview TJ Smelko. TJ is a regular member here at First Methodist Richardson. He is always at the 8:45 traditional service and our 11 o'clock modern service week in and week out. Now, TJ is one of the facilitators of the programs at To Be Like Me because he has different abilities. You'll notice as TJ tells his story, he'll tell you about his different abilities with his hearing. On a regular basis, TJ reads lips as he communicates with people, and likewise, we are able to read TJ's lips as we interview him, but we know as listeners, you don't have that opportunity because you can't see him in person. And so because TJ wanted to make sure that everyone was able to understand his interview clearly, he has given us permission to add a voiceover to his interview. I just know that you're going to enjoy this interview with TJ Smelko. Well, it was certainly a joy to talk to Hollis Owens, and now we have the privilege of talking with one of the facilitators of To Be Like Me, a church member here at First Methodist Richardson. It is really good to have you on the show. This is TJ Smelko. Welcome to the podcast, TJ.
Hello, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Now, you might notice that we are going to be speaking a little slower today and maybe a little more intentionally so that TJ can read our lips as we are interviewing him in the podcast studio today. Along those lines, TJ, would you mind telling our listeners about your different abilities?
I
have several different abilities. I have mild cerebral palsy and bilateral profound hearing loss with the help of bilateral cochlear implants.
Okay, so mild cerebral palsy and bilateral hearing loss. Okay, now tell us a little bit about those cochlear implants and how they assist you in hearing.
Cochlear implants are a medical device which help to simulate bypassing the damaged hearing nerve that allows the person to hear better.
And how long have you had those?
I've had those for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. And I've spoken with you a little bit about the difference that those have made in your life and the way that technology has just opened new doors for you.
Yes, yeah.
So TJ, would you tell us what some of the biggest challenges you face are because of your different abilities?
Well,
One of the biggest challenges that I face with my different ability is that people do not understand how to work with me. Like, if I meet new people, they're nervous because they see me wearing my cochlear implants or with my cerebral palsy, and the best way is to educate them using a positive way of faith and show them the way that you can do things.
Yeah, excellent.
Yes.
Would you mind telling us what it was like growing up with your different abilities? Any in particular stories or moments in your life that you found extremely challenging?
One of them.
One of the challenges I faced growing up was my desire to be a part of the J.J. Pierce swim team. Because I love to swim thanks to the Richardson YMCA swim team. They encouraged me when I was 5 years old. They had encouraged me to love sports because of my different abilities. And when I got older, I wanted to be a part of the swim team. And the school felt that it could interfere with UIL regulations. And to me, it didn't make me feel included. But my hope is that today and tomorrow, there can be more options to help more people be more inclusive, no matter what your abilities are.
So we learned from Hollis that To Be Like Me offers different experiences for children in particular to come learn about people with different abilities. And you work for To Be Like Me. You're one of the facilitators. Would you tell us a little bit about what you do when you're working with the organization?
What I do
when I'm involved with the program is sometimes I work in the Chances Pie and coffee shop or in the assistive technology classroom. And in the Chances Pie coffee shop, I talk to kids and I talk to them about my challenges and I talk to them about what I like to do and give them tips on how to be friends with a person with hearing loss or cerebral palsy. And if I am working in the assistive technology classroom, I give them a demonstration on how cochlear implants work.
Okay. Now, that Chances Pie Shop is a pie shop that's at Highland Park United Methodist Church, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you're working at Chances Pie Shop, do you work behind the counter, or what does that look like when you're interacting with the children?
Well, I do not
work at Chances Pie Shop, but I am behind the counter and I talk to them. Talk to the kids and how my differences can be a positive factor to help them understand how to be included within the community.
Okay, great.
So when you work with To Be Like Me, what sort of assisted technology are you teaching the kids who participate in that?
One of the assistive technologies that I use to teach the kids is that I have an iPad and an iPhone, and I have an app called the Clear Caption app, which allows me to make phone calls and allows me to speak to the person and allows me to read captions and allows calls to see what the person is saying.
So if you were to call me, you would be speaking into the phone, and there's a third party who's typing the captions, and so that when I'm speaking back and answering, you're able to read what I'm saying.
Yes.
It is so much better than being able to talk, because being able to speak on the phone is a lot better, because if you're speaking with them, they'll be able to know what you're feeling and know what your tone is like.
Yeah, interesting. Now, so is that something that I would have to have that app to be able to speak with you?
No, just the person with the hearing loss.
Okay, that makes sense.
So When we spoke with Hollis, she told us a little bit about your involvement and just the excitement on their end about having you involved with To Be Like Me. What sort of impact do you personally hope to make with your work with To Be Like Me?
My goal is to
help them make a big change within the community to eradicate or eliminate bullying, because we want them to have a positive experience and help other people grow friendship with God's love.
I love that. I love it. I love the whole mission of To Be Like Me and the work that y'all are doing. Hollis talked about one of the things that you're trying to instill is the sense of empathy, for children in particular, to have empathy for people with different abilities. What advice would you give to somebody who is trying to develop empathy?
What you can
do is just share your challenge. Use a just do it attitude and help them. Give them the ability to do what they can do.
That is so good.
TJ, we have the joy of having you every Sunday morning in our modern service. How has the work that you've been doing with To Be Like Me intersected with your faith?
It helped me grow.
It helps me grow in a way that every time I go to church on Sunday, it helps me become a good counselor to other people that I'm teaching to be good people. It's like being a disciple. Show them what Jesus is like, and you are helping them feel faithful.
One of my favorite things is getting to stand next to you while Eric is leading the music from the platform and seeing you sign the lyrics to the music, and just being able to speak with you in the ways that your faith is expressed in different ways than mine. And I'm learning from you on a weekly basis. And we really, really appreciate your presence as a part of our church family.
Yeah, thank you.
TJ, we have one question that we ask every guest that comes on the podcast, and that question is this. Up to this point in your life, what is one thing that you wish somebody would have told you?
One thing that I wish somebody would tell me was...
One thing that I wish somebody would have told me is to keep doing what you do, and that they are really happy with the work. One of my favorite memories is that I was involved with Young Life in high school, and I used to be on work crew. And I remember on certain nights in Colorado, and I would be signing the song, because way back then I didn't have cochlear implants, I had hearing aids. I couldn't hear the songs very well, and I would be signing the songs, and there were a couple of times after the worship service, kids would come up to me and say that I am an inspiration to them, knowing that they wanted to become sign language interpreters. They want to learn more about deaf culture and become a part of the deaf community.
I know that in my short time knowing you, I've been inspired seeing you signed, and have made that my New Year's resolution this year is to learn sign language from you. And it's so neat to be able to see how you communicate. And I hope to be able to keep learning, as we already have had a few lessons under my belt. It's a long process. There's a lot to learn. I've got a good teacher, though.
Yeah.
I've got a good teacher.
It takes a long process to learn sign language.
That's right. TJ, we thank you so much for being willing to come on our podcast and for sharing about your experience. I know that both Eric and I have already learned so much from you, and we're really excited that you're able to be in a position where you can just teach more and more people, not only about your own different abilities, but about ways to develop empathy, to, as you say, live in a world that is more inclusive. So thank you, TJ.
Thank you very much, Seth. It's a pleasure to be able to talk with you. Thank you, Eric.
What an inspiring pair of interviews. Two individuals who both saw a need and perhaps we might say felt this calling of God on their lives and both stepped into the situations before them. Hollis seeing this need to create an organization, and then with TJ seeing that need and volunteering on a weekly basis. It reminds me of Isaiah, as God calls the prophet Isaiah, and at first Isaiah is hesitant and says, oh, why me, why me? And then God purifies Isaiah, and Isaiah's response is, here am I. It comes straight from Isaiah chapter 6. Hear these words from Isaiah.
This is verse 8, and Isaiah says, "Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, here am I, send me." Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of More Than Sunday. If you like the podcast, please feel free to share it, go online and leave a comment, or give us a rating so that others might hear about us. We've got a new episode coming out every Wednesday, so make sure you also subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next episode. If you want to find out more about First United Methodist Church Richardson, you can find us online at fumcr.com, as well as on Facebook and Instagram. Special thanks to Hollis Owens and TJ Smelko for joining us this week. And make sure you tune in next Wednesday when we have a conversation about the organization Body and Soul. Have a great week.